Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We got a lot to talk about today as the Steelers are making more moves to fill out their coaching staff, including the offensive line coach and maybe the first real offensive coordinator candidate who we actually talked to in Mobile. We'll talk about that and give you more insights on why I think Omar Khan could make this the year to double dip at wide receiver in the NFL draft. All here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 back in bonus bets if you win. All right, Steelers fans, it's the end of the week. As you guys know, I'm still on the road from Mobile, Alabama. So pardon our dust. This show got up very late. I'm actually recording this Friday morning. Had some technical difficulties trying to do it Thursday night, but we're getting it done. We're getting you our insights. And the Steelers have made more moves in their coaching staff. It seems like they're coming at will now that they're starting to put things together. But we do know some more hires have been added to the mix. We told you that the Steelers are keeping Tom Arth, Scott McCarthy, and Gerald Alexander, but now we know some outside names being added to the mix. And chief among them, James Campen, a longtime offensive line coach. He's coming to the Pittsburgh Steelers to do that. Ramon Chinyoung, going to look like an assistant offensive line coach. Adam Henry, Bills wide receiver coach. He's going to be joining the mix there. And then Jason Simmons, a more veteran defensive coach, adding to the game. We're not sure what positioning he's going to be played, so it's going to be a prominent role. Maybe that means a pass game coordinator on defense. We'll see. But I want to start with James Campen because I think this is an interesting move that goes to what Nick and I were talking about on yesterday's show when we were talking about the importance of getting experienced guys to come in and help young guys. And let's face it, the Steelers still have a young offensive line. And for the most part, that young offensive line had a good 2025 season. We said, hey, this group by the end of the season needs to be trending upwards, needs to be closer to, being an above average unit, so that they can show that they're making progress. And I think that they did that. But with the changing of the coaching staff and it comes the opportunity to get a new voice in there. And this new voice is actually a rather experienced voice. If you're unfamiliar with James Campen, 61 years old, not too far behind Mike McCarthy, but of course has a long history with Mike McCarthy because he actually was on the Packers before Mike McCarthy. He was a Packers assistant in 2004 and 2005, then rose through their assistant O-line coach in 2006, their O-line coach from 2007 to 2017, basically most of McCarthy's career. Then he did a year at the Browns, a year at the Chargers, a year with the Texans, and then he spent a couple of years with the Panthers, and then he's been out of the league. But that he's coming back shows, I think, a few things. One, he's ready to get back to work. Two, he wants to coach with Mike McCarthy, and this could be something that's good because again, these guys had a long history together. Mike McCarthy took over in 2006, I believe, and so they ran into each other then. And then eventually over time, Mike McCarthy was able to, kind of just keep the relationships that he does. And I think that it's important to have coaches that can do that. But James Campen, by all accountability, is a very good and well-taught O-line coach. This could help solidify this offensive line into being a much more consistent unit. And again, I give full credit to Pat Meyer. I thought he did a good job with what he had, but now the pieces are coming of age. Now the guys are starting to show up. Now you need this group to take another step forward, a more organized step forward. They need to be prepared to protect either an old man Aaron Rodgers or a younger quarterback who's not going to be able to make the kind of reads that he does to get the ball out as quick as he does in those situations. So I look at that and I think, man, there's something there that could be interesting to see there on the part of James Campen. But other guys like we said, Adam Henry, Bills wide receivers coach, heard mixed views about him, but maybe he comes to the table, he helps out right away. But I want to talk more about a candidate for a big position. That's offensive coordinator. Now, as we've noted, this Mike McCarthy's going to be calling the plays. So whoever gets the OC job, that's not going to be the typical OC job the Steelers have had open for like the last, 20 years, whatever it is when they hire Mike McCarthy. I think that this is an opportunity for for the Steelers to kind of branch out their staff a little bit and figure some things out. And lo and behold, the name that gets dropped midday during Thursday is Scott Tolzien, a former Packers quarterback who's turned into an assistant coach and is working his way up the ranks. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Scott Tolzien, I actually wrote about him a bit because he was one of the many guys who has been a backup for Mike McCarthy over the years. And so I thought that was interesting. But then he also went on to coach Aaron Rodgers, technically. We were talking, we're looking at the history of Scott Tolzien. It didn't coach me, backed him up, but I talked to him about the potential of him actually coaching him, because we actually talked to him because he was coaching at the Senior Bowl. Apologies for my twisted up there. It's very early. But we got a chance to talk to him. Scott Tolzien was the offensive coordinator for the American team at the Senior Bowl. So when we got a chance to talk to him, wanted to ask him about his connection with Mike McCarthy. He said, quote, "He's been incredible for my career, both as a player and a coach. I've learned a ton about how to approach a game plan, how to manage a team, and everything in between." He said he's gotten these jobs for a reason, and I'm super appreciative to him to have crossed paths with him. He also talked about, because myself, Alan Saunders, Nick Fairball, we were kind of trying to press like, hey, so you got an opportunity to be the Steelers offensive coordinator. And he said, quote, "Anytime you get an opportunity to go to interview for one of those positions, that's a really great growth opportunity. So I'm lucky that I'm in a position that I can enjoy where I'm at. These things are going really good, and yet you always see what's out there." But my focus right now is on this game, basically talking about like how he wants to keep his feet where they are right now, and coaching the players that are right in front of him at the Senior Bowl, which is the right and admirable thing to do. But I do think it's going to be really interesting to see if the Steelers, they're bringing him in for an interview. If it's going to be a productive interview, they just sign that off right now. And I think that this could be an interesting crew that they're assembling right here. A lot of guys with Mike McCarthy connections, and if not Mike McCarthy connections, Pittsburgh connections. And that isn't exactly a bad thing. My biggest thing that I've continued to raise is that there's a part of me that feels like hiring the guys that that you've been known, bringing them to trying to make it work in a new place. Sometimes I get it. You got to stick to what you know. You got to stick to your bread and butter. But it makes me think back to, books I used to read about the Steelers' past and the struggles that they were in, and how oftentimes their struggle was because the original Art Rooney would, spend too much on a guy, or he would, or he'd draft a guy because he was a local, things like that. And they had to do away with his control because he wasn't helping the team. And I think that's where, if you're the Steelers right now, there's a little bit of worry that there could be something along the lines of like, hey, are we picking these guys just because we know them? Or are we picking these guys because they're the most innovative guys out there? They're the guys that check all the boxes that we have as an organization. I think that's the thing you got to watch out for there. But certainly, Tolzien will be interesting to bring in as an offensive coordinator candidate. But I think you're sensing the energy and the vibes from his impact at the Senior Bowl. Garrett Nussmeier, a lot of praise for him. Their connection goes way back. But I'm just interested to see how the Steelers continue to fill out this coaching staff, because there's also still openings at positions that maybe they can keep some guys around. But ultimately, this is a business. This is a cutthroat business. They move on from you as soon as you lose value, or you're being paid way above your value. So I think it's going to be interesting to see that play out. But the coaching search is still well underway. It's still a lot to go through there. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to get you my insights on the Senior Bowl, what I've seen there, and why I think this is the year for the Steelers to double dip at wide receiver the right way in the NFL draft. We'll keep it here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off, and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress of the game work. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for $150, all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take your taxes off your plate and get back your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointments today. We're also brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel, of course, America's #1 sports book. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the chance to get in on the action before the NFL season comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because the season's over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We're going to continue to we're going to get back into the Senior Bowl, because I feel like because of this coaching search, I have not been able to dive in on this show on the Senior Bowl the way that I've wanted to, because the Senior Bowl to me and the draft season whole, it's special. It's a chance to evaluate guys. You get players at their most raw sense when they're just trying to prove who they are. And I think there's something beautiful in that, because when you get the chance to see these guys they're bearing their hearts out, they're showing every bit of their work, you get a sense to see who these guys really are, or who are they at least going to put on as a show for you in these situations. And so, like we talked about how, like last year when we talked to Derek Harmon at the podium at the Combine, which I waited 2 hours to get because of his medicals. We got a great sense from him. He mentioned wanting to be like Cam Hayward, wanting to be like Chris Jones. That's the future he sees with himself. And that became a storyline that I asked him about all year long. And all that to say, I think that there's a lot of fun there. But I want to talk about this wide receiver group at the Senior Bowl and how it plays into the larger group that is not just the Senior Bowl, but all eligible wide receivers in this NFL draft class. And y'all, this could be a really good class. And I know I said it before, like I think that the wide receiver class is good. But I think it's even deeper than I realized. I was looking at this like, okay, they need to get one of these top 5 or 6 receivers. If they don't, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. There's a lot of playmakers right now. And granted, the Senior Bowl is one of the easiest places for wide receivers to shine because of how drills are set up and the things it puts on them. But man, some of these wide receivers, they look fast, they look talented, they're getting open, they're running their routes well, they're winning combat catches. Not everybody, but there's quite a few of them. And we've been talking about them. I talked about Malachi Fields a lot yesterday because we spoke to him, and I got a very mature sense from him and as far as how he operates and how he does. But he's also 6'4", runs pretty well. And if he runs a decent 40-yard dash, you're probably going to see this guy jump to the earlier part of the second round, not the mid or the late. But there's certain things that I did like about that, about that. And I think that this is a wide receiver class that again, if just the Senior Bowl guys, okay, maybe a little bit different. But when you're throwing in the guys I'm seeing in the Senior Bowl step up, along with the obvious picks like Jordan Tyson, uh, uh, see, this is what happens when you study all these people. You forget the people that ain't even here. But Jordan Tyson, Carnell Tate, Mekhi Lemon. There you go. Because Mekhi Lemon's my guy. I think that's the guy I would be stumping for right now if I'm the Steelers. I'm trying to make sure that guy gets got. But we talked about other guys. Jacoby Lane, another 6'4" wide receiver, a little less stocky, but a talented guy there. John Carroll has, no, John Carroll, it's not his name, this is college. Tyron Montgomery from John Carroll. He's made a lot of plays in this Senior Bowl practices, and it's three practices throughout the week. I will not be here for the game, full disclosure. I'll be back in Pittsburgh for that, but we'll watch the game from home and get you my thoughts on that on Monday's episode. But again, it just seemed like, and it wasn't just like one or two offs that I'm talking about here where some of these guys made plays. These guys were making plays downfield or beating guys in one-on-ones and was playing to their system. I think that's the kind of stuff that that really matters when it comes to the wide receiver position. And again, I think the Steelers, you saw with the trading away of George Pickens and the bringing of DK Metcalf that you got a guy who's going to be a team first guy, a team leader who's going to, if he sees Ben Skoranek bleeding, he's going to tell him to get off the special teams. I got this, man. You need to go heal yourself up. That's the kind of stuff that can make you, kind of smile at the end of the day. But when you're looking at the receivers and you're looking at what's out there, I do think there's some talent out there. I talked to a lot of these guys. Josh Cameron of Baylor, who I talked about on the first day I was out here after Tuesday for Wednesday. I thought Josh Baylor was knocking it out of the park, and I think he has. He's put himself in a really, really good situation. Again, Josh Cameron out of Baylor, but he's a guy who's like 6'1", 6'1". There's good opportunity there, but there's other people that also aren't getting enough love in this situation, and one of them is Ted Hurst, Georgia State wide receiver who went to a smaller school because I think people overlook that, but he's made some spectacular one-handed grabs in traffic and just keeps getting up and keeps doing them, and people keep challenging him and he keeps winning. I'm bringing up all these names to illustrate to you at the Senior Bowl, there is a dearth of wide receivers talent. There is a good group of wide receiver talent to pull from. And I'm pretty sure, when you're looking at that talent that you can pull from there, that you're going to be able to find a lot of receivers who, have a track record or don't have a track record. But I think that's where it could get really interesting for the Steelers moving forward if they can get the double dip at wide receiver, because I still think you want to trade up and get a Mekhi Lemon or a superstar in the making guy, but then also that young guy that can pair with them and be you have a long-term project, you have a long-term, more sure that it's the sure thing. That's why I've been thinking that, but I look at this receiver class because on top of Montgomery, I think Cyrus Allen of Cincinnati's had a great week. Aaron Anderson, though, on the shorter side, more like Calvin Austin, he's also been good this week. Again, I think the Steelers, they're going to be going for like the 5'11" and up types because they have a lot of those the shorter guys. But I just look at how the Senior Bowl roster was constructed, and we see certain things there. But again, all the names that we're naming here, none of these guys are the guys that are going to be at the top of the list. It's going to be a draft. It's going to be a wild draft process to go through these. But the more and more I watch these receivers, the more and more I get a sense that, man, they could benefit from both a second and a fifth right now. And I think that's certainly possible. But I also think that right now the biggest thing is they still got to keep building the offense. And I think getting wide receivers is the next step. I know some people have said, "Oh, get another offensive lineman." I feel like they've been there, done that. I know that some people are over Broderick Jones. I'm not. I think that he came in very raw. It was part of the process. This was his first year at left tackle. He didn't even get to finish the season. Dylan did play well though, but I look at this and I think, man, this is the time. You haven't made this big splash at wide receiver. You haven't been doing this. This is a good time to kind of get things going, and make it so that your wide receiver room isn't depleted like the way it has been for the past few years. Because man, just when y'all get upset about this stuff, I get it. It's been rough, and the next day. But if the Steelers can double dip at wide receiver in a very good class, it gives them the chance to link up with a lot of different guys, and I think there's a lot of potential on the line there. So I think it's going to be really pertinent that the Steelers get out strong, and give themselves a cushion here. But bottom line, I like the idea of this. I think that there's going to be a big push to get the passing game going with Mike McCarthy, and this is why I also think they're double dipping. I think that they're going to be trading up to go get a wide receiver or a playmaker of some sort. But I think that this draft class is good enough to get a high pick at wide receiver and a mid-round pick at wide receiver. And I would not be shocked if it's like a Mekhi London type that gets traded up for, because I think he just does a lot the Steelers want to do, at least when I watch his tape. And then, kind of like how the Steelers would add linebackers, back in like the 2000s or they keep adding them on when they feel like they got something going there. Back in like the 2000s and 2010s when they were stronger at that position. I think that, or back when they had good wide receivers in the 2010s. I was trying to think of like James Ferrier, and they had Larry Foote, and they added Lawrence Timmons, and they kept stacking that position. Then eventually they brought in Vince Williams, and they brought in Ryan Shazier. But listen to me, I should be thinking about how they did wide receivers in the 2010s. Think about, they had Antonio Brown, but they were drafting Marcus Wheaton, and they were drafting Martavis Bryant, they were drafting Juju Smith-Schuster, and when they had Hines Ward, they drafted Mike Wallace, Emmanuel Sanders, all those guys, and eventually Antonio Brown. But I think that's the line that they need to be in. If they can keep young playmakers at the wide receiver position, it would be great, and that would also give DK Metcalf, I think, the space to be that leader for that young group. And if that young group that you trade up for and get at a really high position, if that player is like Mekhi Levin or whoever, they become the number one receiver, then fine, you did it, you got the great one. But I do think that there's going to be some challenges. Of course, other teams are going to get them, but there's a big opportunity for the Steelers to address wide receiver and finally fill out that position. And again, with two rookies in what looks to be a very good rookie class. And going into the Senior Bowl, I felt like this was a really good rookie class. So I don't know if really good or very good, further amplifies it, but this is a heck of a wide receiver class. Omar Khan, I think, must double dip on it, because if he does, I think you get your two young guys that are in there for the next at least 4 or 5 years. They're going to be really good. They're going to be part of your new nucleus. All of this is very important. So I do think that'd be a good strategy at a good time. We'll go over a lot more of these things when we get the whole list of who's going to the combine. We have a lot of time for that. So don't worry about that. But we got to take a quick break. When we come back, though, I want to talk about the safeties that I saw, and I actually wrote about them in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, because this team, I think, desperately needs safety, especially a free safety. If Deshaun Elliott's back, they have a strong. But this is where they need to move next. I'll talk about who I'm looking at there for those options next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, remind you, this show is also brought to you by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed-sponsored jobs hiring. If you're hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed-sponsored jobs puts your job post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates even faster. If I needed to hire someone for the show, I'd just go straight to Indeed and be specific about what I need, real experience, and not just a resume buzzword. Sponsored jobs boosts your profile so that people who are the best matches for your role can see that role. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less strikes, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue talking about our insights from the Senior Bowl. I want to talk about the safety position because the safety position, I think, could be a interesting position for the Steelers to swipe at a certain time. Now, going into the draft class, I admit, I thought safety was a need, but I hadn't taken the time to really look too hard at a lot of safety tape. And I'm not saying that I've looked a lot hard at a lot of safety tape so far, but I have been watching that group that's been third, maybe fourth most, I think maybe third most important of the groups that I've kept eyes on in this draft class, because I do think this team could really use a playmaking free safety. And I don't mean, a late stab and, maybe you get Shamarko Thomas, maybe you get like a decent guy. I'm talking about a guy who could start this year, be a playmaker, be dangerous in the back end, and give you something there. Because again, they got their strong safety. They got Sean Elliott. They need a free safety. They need a guy that's going to be able to fly around in the back end. And so I was watching the safety position a lot closer in these practices, and I saw some promising things there because there were some big plays being made. And again, you can read more about this in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I do have that coming up. I believe today, actually, when looking at with my observations from the third day of the Senior Bowl practices. But the guy who I think stood out the most and has looked really good in doing so is Bud Clark, TCU safety, really talented guy. Really versatile guy, a guy who's listed at 6'1", 185 in the official program for the Senior Bowl. If you look up his numbers on Pro Football Focus, this is a guy who played he played in the slot, but he also played in the box, but he also played free safety a lot. And it was as even a distribution as you could get. And he just seemed so ready for all of it. And he looked like a really good athlete. He played center fielder. If you want to see one of his interceptions, go follow me on Twitter at Carter Critiques. I was posting videos there from that I got. And I thought his interception was one of the best interceptions of this camp. Because he was playing center field in this camp, these Senior Bowl practices. But he was playing center field on a deep ball. He was in position when the ball went to the right sideline. He went right to it, attacked, got the ball, and it was a big play. And I think that if he can do that for the Steelers defense, if the Steelers can get anybody to do that play that free safety position at a prime position, the way that Minkah Fitzpatrick did in his prime, and again. Okay, maybe not the way Minkah Fitzpatrick did it, because Minkah Fitzpatrick was like a 3-time All-Pro. Like you're not just going to grow them on trees. But if you could do it in a way that I think, makes it, workable, I think that there's something there. I think that this is a safety position that the Steelers absolutely should be taking a look at here. Bud Clark was the main one that I noticed the most play, being a difference maker in free safety. Other guys are more box type safeties, or at least guys that are, operating closer to the line of scrimmage. I talked to Kamari Ramsey, the USC safety, and I like Kamari Ramsey. I've talked about him, but he's more of a slot corner to underneath safety type of guy. So it's been interesting to learn who's who and who goes where and, how it works. But I do think that there is I do think that there is a pool of safety talent here that the Steelers should be pulling from. As Akeem Wheatley out of Penn State, VJ Payne out of Kansas State. I think I mentioned him at the top of the week, talking about safeties who I think could get a little bit more shine for what they're doing. But I think this is a good group of safeties to pull from. I think I look at these guys and I look at what they're doing and things and how they've progressed. I think that if the Steelers, if they don't want to go get Caleb Downs, that trade up super pick that they have to probably make to get him, and you wanted to wait until the second round, the third round, there's plenty of those types of guys. There's plenty of those types of guys. You can go get just solid safety play. The Steelers have been trying to get solid safety play, but now you have a chance to draft an athletic guy in the back of your defense. And what that can do is, we saw it can take the top off. It could put the top back on the defense. It can make it harder for the deep ball to work. It can take advantage and create turnovers. That's what Terrell Austin was setting up for so much for his career, was to say, hey, let's put Minkah Fitzpatrick in position to get interceptions, and it worked. And they often won tight games because of it. But that's where I think that this could be interesting. Is there a player like that in this draft class where or at least even in the Senior Bowl roster or the draft class, whatever, that can be that kind of wow factor. Now, at the safety position, it's tough to get wow. You got to be really disciplined. Sometimes your best reps are the ones you don't even get targeted because you're in such position. But I also think that there's, some good to that, because I also look at the safety position as, a group that, I think it gets undervalued because of NFL markets and things, but safety is so important. And if you can have a great safety that can create turnovers and keep the top off, keep the top on your defense, that can be the world of difference. And so, again, I'm looking at Bud Clark as the primary one from the Senior Bowl. There's other guys like Jelon Kilgore, Deshaun Singleton. I told you guys about Kamari Ramsey, Michael Toff from Texas, and then Zakee Wheatley, who I brought up earlier. There's a big pool of players to pull from, and I do think that this is a year where they can double dip at wide receiver and still address all their needs. If you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, go try to fix some things with those picks, especially if you're okay with just with sitting there at 21, maybe go say, hey, we're going to go move some other picks around. Maybe we're going to make some other trades. Again, I do not expect the Steelers to sit and just take all 12 of their picks. I think they're going to move up in the draft. I think they're going to make some other moves. I think they might trade some picks to next year to say, hey, we're going to use these next year when the quarterback class that we really want is available. But safety is a position they don't have to draft early. They could draft second, third, maybe even fourth round and still get their guy. But it's a class to be gotten. And so I think this is going to be a group that we keep an eye on, especially with the combine rolling around, how they progress in that direction and what the Steelers do with that. But with all that, we thank you for tuning into the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, wherever you get your social media. My handle is always at Carter Critiques. Read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We're going to post-gazette.com. Find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes. Back here on Monday, recapping what happened in the Senior Bowl and getting you guys ready with all the other coaching moves right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.